Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Alana here. Welcome back to 3 Degrees of Love Healing Tarot. So this is it. Welcome back to the final installment, version 4, if you will, the final boss, if you will, of tarot spreads for the Mental Monsters tarot deck. So everything inspired by what the lovely Amiee Burgos has created here. And if you haven't seen the videos that I've done most recently featuring the Mental Monsters tarot, please check it out. I also did create a playlist featuring all of that will be featuring too, I should say, rather, all of Push Kitty's work. I do have a couple of videos, I believe, that out right now that I've done maybe a couple of years ago, featuring the Little Buddha Tarot. So be sure to check that out. When I find it, I will add it to the playlist. But it is going to be there for you to check out on my channel. Also, my very chatty walkthrough that I've done of the Mental Monsters tarot, and the interview that I did with their creator and the brilliant mind behind the brand Push Kitty, Amiee. So yeah, so if you haven't seen any of that if you haven't seen any of that yet, please be sure to go and check that out on my channel. So yeah, so let's get into it. So in this episode, the tarot spread now, like I said, version 4, and I'm calling it the final boss, if you will, of tarot spreads. All to do with, integration, doing the shadow work, right? That's what all 4 of these tarot spreads that I created, in this sort of layered way. And if you're following along with the videos, you will see, it starts with self-reflection. It talks about, awareness, of how we interact in relationships. And then we're another one with the layer added of, taking a look at our reactions versus our response, right? Identifying our triggers even. And now in this final boss, right, we're looking at how more so of integration, how we're integrating, the awareness and pairing it with the accountability to do, to become that switch point in breaking, this cyclical trauma pattern of, right, tit for tat sort of mentality, when we're not integrating integrity in, in our awareness and how we move with our choices, how we interact with one another, and how that just continues this karmic, traumatic cycle and pattern, and, disconnect, right? Blindness of another's humanity, this, hierarchy, and that is what creates this, trauma imbalance. And, we think that, part of the rebellion is also, being forceful in a way to be heard, but in a way that's also not of integrity, and being mindful of the humanity of another person, right? And this using your trauma as a shield to build walls to create disconnect from one another, right? This blindness of seeing the humanity within each other as, right? When we don't take the accountability. So we can have awareness all we want, being able to point out patterns, being able to, say and identify people as being toxic and stuff like that. And have this one lane narrow viewpoint that we categorize and shove people in, but forgetting that a human being is so much more complex than that, right? There's so many different layers and dimensions to the human experience, right? And it's opening ourselves up to that understanding. But how do we do that? Well, it's about, we have to be able to identify the patterns within ourselves, right? Not only how things affect us, but how what we do now affects the other. Tracking the pattern from previous generations to the outcome for future generations. But we also have to take a look at our present lifetime patterns within ourselves. That's how we do the healing work, right? And being open to doing the repair work, right? That's part of the shadow work, taking the accountability, right? And then as you take have the awareness of your own repeating karmic patterns of behavior and the effects that it has on your life and others, right? Taking that accountability and then having that openness for repair and identifying what truly is toxicity, right? Having that, because here's the thing. When we think about even kindness and empathy and what that looks like, right? When I talk about why it's important to have that sense of awareness and understanding, right? Because when you understand that, when you can accept and respect yourself for the complexity that you have as a human being, you can have an appreciation, a better appreciation and an acceptance and understanding of the complexity of that of another, right? And open and understanding awareness that, we're all different and we all have our own mental monsters to face and, have awareness of and take accountability for, right? And then openness for repair. And part of that acceptance too is through open communication and comprehension, right? There's different levels too to empathy. And if you recall, when in previous videos, I talk about the idea of saboteurs, right? And the thing is, it's not also part of the healing work, and the progression in that isn't just about it's not about seeking perfection, right? Because we're perfectly imperfect human beings, right? We're all built that way. And life circumstances, right? Past trauma patterns and programmings and in societal influences and all of that stuff, right, shapes our experience and then who we become. And it's also taking accountability for our part in the process. And it's as we do that and we take that accountability and work to making that switch, not just for ourselves, but for one another, right? We in turn create better circumstances for all of our benefits in this lifetime and future lifetimes to come. Changing the energy frequency dynamic of our human existence for all over time, right? That's the rippling butterfly effect. And so it doesn't matter when we start, as long as we have that willingness to walk that conscious path of right? But it's not, you can't just have the awareness without the accountability. That's like half winging it, if you will. I feel. If you aren't following me with the analogy and the understanding of what I mean by that, right? Creates that imbalance within self and that rippling imbalance effect, right? Outwards to those around us, to, right, our communities, globally, collectively. So, we want to, in tandem with the awareness, have that accountability so that it works and brings into balance that yin and yang within self. Right? What we nurture, we create. What we create, we nurture. When I talk about the saboteurs, we all have that judge within us, that mirror in which we look at ourselves and then reflect, outwards with one another. Right? If I talk about, and I will have the link to the resources down below about, Shirzad Judgement, the creator of Saboteurs, and there's an assessment. We all have a judge, right? And like I said, that mirror in which we judge ourselves and one another. But the thing is, when we only see half the reflection, or willing to only look at half the reflection, right? We lose that sense of curiosity. But what happens when we have the curiosity that openness, that empathy. We nurture the love back, right? So it's like when we judge others, right? We operate in two modes. There's that instant conclusion, right? But there's then the discernment, the curiosity. We evaluate, we stay open. True discernment leaves space for the truth to still unfold. And that's often where we go off the rails when it comes to, how we relate with one another. When I talk about, that quick sort of, when we don't face our triggers, when we don't, take accountability for them, and we judge another based on past woundings, right? And we don't take accountability for that. And we shut down because of these triggers. So then you've turned, right? That's the sort of the negative side of the judge. But the other side, the true discernment, like I said, allowing for that openness and flow. You are asking questions, right? That's the communication part. When, rather than, immediately judging someone based on something that, triggers you. And so you're quick to label them into something and shove them in a box, and then don't want to face it or deal with it because it feels uncomfortable, right? When we devalue how we close ourselves off from, potential opportunities for growth, expansion with one another. We do that with ourselves. We do that with one another, within our own families. We do that in our communities. We do that collectively speaking. But as we do the shadow work and the healing work, and we combine the accountability, the awareness, with the accountability, and they work in tandem with one another, it becomes a very nurturing effect, right? That all-encompassing heart. And when the two sides work in tandem with one another, it creates the foundation and structure and balance. Now, like I said, the goal isn't perfection. However, progression, a willingness to start the process, right? As long as you are living and breathing and are walking a path in this lifetime, you have an opportunity for healing and repair. So, remembering that we all have that judge, so we will all, instinctually, that's the survival mechanism, right? To first judge. But when you're doing the healing work and you're opening yourself up, you're building flexible boundaries versus rigid walls. You're not, just taking one thing that seems like one thing and then making a concrete judgment of someone and then shoving them in a box and then instantly blocking and shaming, people. You would allow for curiosity and openness. And the discernment part is understanding the true difference between what is actually nurturing versus toxic and what isn't. Right? When we stop seeing and disconnecting from each other and not seeing the humanity of the other person, only willing to accept ourselves and having that hierarchy sort of view, right? That's part of the makeup of the matrix, right? So this is part of why this 4-part spread. Now we're looking at, how we're truly working towards, moving away from reactive tit-for-tat behavior into a more balanced sort of response, curiosity, discernment along with curiosity, right? Empathy, compassion, understanding, acceptance, all of that is part of the healing, right? So the awareness and then taking the accountability and then integrating that into our present actions, how we build moving forward as individuals, with our families, with our friends, with our communities, right? With collectively speaking, the integration. So this spread is a 7-part with a bonus question. So technically making it an 8-part spread. So this spread, integrating integrity in relationships. All right. So this is the fourth part spread, like I said, and we have 7 questions with a bonus question, making it a total of 8. Seven cards for the Chariot, Major Arcana, the Yin and the Yang, the Charioteer with the black and white horses, and also how I feel like this connects to Pride and Juneteenth, even with the month of love and Black History Month. Is that, you know, when we this idea of the system of hierarchy, right? Patriarchy versus matriarchy, right? Male versus female, race versus race, culture against culture, yada yada yada, da 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 da. Okay? And that sort of dogmatic sort of divide, the widespread of division within even Christianity alone, even, and how that evolved over time. But with the eighth card with the bonus question, right? That turns it into 8. That brings us to the next card, which actually, depending on the tarot system you're using, is the 8th card, which dual is either strength. In the RWS, it's strength, right? But in the Tarot de Marseille system, it's actually justice. And I can't remember if in the Thoth system, if it's also justice as well, is the 8. You know, in the, you know, those that read tarot and are familiar, you can, you know, and I will double check that in editing, of course, for you, but you can, you know, put that in the comments. But yeah, right? Okay. So when we balance the yin and yang within ourselves and the choices, and we integrate that within how we you know, create and produce, you know, on our path within each of our individual journeys, and how that, you know, collectively builds, right? That leads into, right, the continuity and creation and foundation and strength of our existence. So it's time to integrate the awareness with the accountability. And I feel like with the creation of this 4-part spread series and how, you know, I've created the spread, it's for individual reflection. You don't have to have a tarot deck even to be able to participate and reflect on this. You can just use your own intuition. You can use whatever inspires you through meditation even, and journal about it and reflect on the questions, right? And if you do use a tarot deck, if you're inspired to even get the mental monsters and use the mental monsters for your own self-reflection with the guidebook too, I would encourage you, absolutely. But, you know, given everything that I've been, you know, on my healing path, my healing journey, and everything that I've been doing, combining my therapy, combining, you know, my long 13-year journey with continuous complex grief, right? And everything that I've had to, you know, personally endure, my own education and experience, combining that with my own curiosity of expanding, you know, my spirituality and exploring, you know, the dynamics of tarot and combining that with therapeutic practices, and basically, you know, really doing that work, having the opportunity to do that work even for myself with professional guidance, with my own personal therapist that I've, you know, been grateful to have consistently, but also with my own, you know, curiosity and experience and, you know, education to and professional experience to do that. You know, after everything that I've seen, have personally experienced, you know, have done the accountability, the self-assessment, the self-reflection work to bring myself to where I am today, even given everything that I've still been healing from to date. I just feel like this has been something absolutely important. And so, you know, all the spreads are listed, you know, and time-stamped in the description box of every video, including this one. When I finally get it out. As I'm filming this today, it is Monday, June 8th, 2026. And as we're in the month of, you know, Pride, understanding that we're not just black and white and gray. As individual human beings with all the complexities of our existence, we are from our DNA, our skin, our bones, our blood, our feelings, our behaviors, our trauma patterns, everything that we are right? The actions, the energy that we give and take and receive and spread matters equally, right? The love that we share, because love is love. And so we're not just, like I said, black or white or gray or brown or whatever. We are all the colors of the rainbow. In our totality and the complexities and everything shooting through our veins, the neurons. So, let's get into the spread, people. Let's get into the spread. So the first question is, what relational pattern am I currently noticing clearly? So as we're doing this, this is a collective reading. And so what relational pattern are we currently noticing clearly? All right, question 1. Okay. 9 of Cups, validation. Interesting. That desire for recognition and acceptance, and we have first, right? Okay, yep. Okay. Let's, I'm going to read the guidebook on that one. The 9 of Cups. And I do remember this came up in the collective reading that I did with Amiee as well. So, you know, be sure to check that out. Yeah. Okay, so let me read the 9 of Cups here. 9 of Cups, validation. 9 of Cups, keywords: satisfaction, comfort, contentment, enjoyment, gratitude, success, fulfillment, pleasure, happiness, indulgence, abundance. Nuance: insecurity, emotional emptiness, external validation, approval seeking, performative happiness, hollow satisfaction. Validation: the reinforcement of self-worth or emotional satisfaction through external approval, recognition, or affirmation, often shaping confidence and perceived fulfillment. Meaning: the 9 of Cups represents satisfaction, fulfillment, and emotional comfort. Traditionally, this card reflects wishes realized and a sense of contentment, rooted in emotional or material ease. It often appears when pleasure, confidence, or personal gratification is evident. This card also highlights validation, the reinforcement of self-worth through external approval or achievement. While recognition can feel affirming, reliance on it may limit deeper fulfillment. The Nine of Cups invites awareness of where satisfaction originates, encouraging emotional grounding that supports lasting contentment rather than momentary affirmation alone. Monster take. Validation concentrates the Nine of Cups into fulfillment shaped by recognition. Satisfaction becomes externally reinforced, stabilized through acknowledgement rather than internal attunement. Emotional expression remains visible and amplified, yet dependent on others' response to feel complete. This monster takes hold when affirmation substitutes for self-settling. Worth becomes responsive to feedback, creating fulfillment that fluctuates with attention. The cost appears subtly as contentment relies on reinforcement instead of grounding internally. Holding this card links satisfaction to response from others. Fulfillment appears while grounding remains outside the self. Yes. Absolutely. Okay. So, what a start to this collective reading tarot spread video here. Okay, question 2. Where are we already aware of our impact in relationships? Right. Where are we already aware of our impact in relationships? Okay. So, this idea, 6, the Lovers, codependency. So really looking at, yes, and understanding true toxic relationships. What, right? So denying the other half of selves and okay. Major Arcana card. Now. Six. Alright. Six, the Lovers, codependency. The Lovers. Keywords: connection, intimacy, union, mutual reflection, shared desires, mirroring, emotional closeness. Nuance: enmeshment, loss of self, dependency, imbalanced love, obsession, engulfment, fear of abandonment. Codependency: a psychological pattern where a person becomes overly reliant on another for emotional validation, identity, or purpose, often to the point of neglecting their own needs or boundaries. It can involve enabling self-abandonment and the fear of separation. Meaning: the Lovers represent connection, unity, and meaningful choice, traditionally associated with partnership and attraction. This card also reflects alignment between values, desires, and actions. It often appears at moments where relationships or commitments mirror deeper internal truths, signaling a crossroads shaped by mutual understanding or decision. Beyond interpersonal connection, this card emphasizes conscious choice. It highlights the responsibility inherent in selecting paths, values, or relationships. The Lovers reflects integrity between inner belief and outward behavior, suggesting that alignment requires clarity, accountability, and self-awareness rather than idealization alone. Interesting. Thus, the theme of this whole mini series with the mental monsters and these tarot spreads. Okay. Monster take. Codependency entangles the Lovers' bond, turning connection into reliance. Unity blurs into fusion, and individuality is sacrificed to maintain closeness. Choice narrows as fear of separation overrides authenticity. This monster emerges when harmony is prioritized over truth. Love remains present, but boundaries dissolve. The relationship sustains itself through reassurance rather than mutual autonomy, binding connection to emotional survival instead of shared alignment. Holding this card. This card sustains connection without differentiation. Union remains intact, while separation has not been named. And so I want to talk about and it's this also goes back to something that I mentioned in the previous video when we were talking about reaction versus response. And the part, you know, when I talk about, you know, when we adapt healing words, right? And, you know, the difference between maintaining peace versus protecting the ego, right? The awareness when we're quick to react to something or a situation, when we don't communicate, right? And we have that sort of relational breakdown because of our triggers, our you know, quick reactive, quick to judgment and labeling and shoving people into a box because of fear, past trauma, right? Our trauma patterns. When we don't take the accountability for that, right? And we build those walls when we withdraw our empathy and our curiosity, how that you know, the drainage collectively and from ourselves, right? That separation, that disconnection, that divide, that constant rebellious fight for individual human rights, right? That constant ping pong, right? We continue to repeat those trauma patterns. It's with now the healing and the facing the shadow work and facing our triggers and bringing those conscious awareness of repeated patterns, right? Of trauma, generationally, within our patterns of behavior, within our own lifetimes, right? When we have that awareness and accountability, we flip that switch. I used that analogy before of the railway switch. And then now when we integrate that, so it's one thing to, you know, have the awareness and, oh, look at me, I am so proud of myself, but you don't have the integrity, the to back, and then we blindly follow because half that separation that trauma creates, and then the codependency, how we relate to, you know, each other, how we disconnect even from each other, that pattern of disconnection, of avoidance, right? A reactive response. The flee, trauma response. But also when the self-abandonment here too. That's the other counter to the avoidance. And depending on our trauma, especially when trauma happens at an early age, we can get in a trauma pattern of that avoidance or fawn, or, right? The various trauma freeze. Flop. Okay. Question 3. Where are we reacting instead of responding in relationships? Okay. All right. Question 3. Where are we reacting instead of responding in relationships? Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Oh, I see a devil card. Okay. Oh, that's way too many. There. Okay, but that's the only one that flipped up. Okay, you know what? Let's see. We got some extra messages. But this is the devil card we have here. The devil, toxic attachment. Oh my god, okay. I'm sorry, that's funny. That's so funny. Okay, let's see what the extra messages are, because there are 3 cards here that came out. Okay, so, oh wow, okay. Okay. Well, these are the extra messages that came up underneath, okay, for this one. For question 3 of this spread, we have the Knight of Swords, rushed conviction. And isn't this what I've been talking about? The quick to labeling. Rushed conviction, speeding towards the devil, toxic attachment. And that is a double-edged sword, right? When we, because of past trauma, maybe we have dealt with toxic people. This is also where the understanding where I talk about empathy burnout, right? That being a real thing. But what happens when we the counter sort of trauma response is to completely disconnect and build walls rather than really doing the healing work to have discernment. So you build that judge so large, and it's that judge that you view other people at, that ego response. And then we calling that peace. But really it's just avoidance in disguise. A trauma response because of past trauma. So when we get caught up in labels, right? Here we have Speedy Gonzalez and his little toy car here. Coming here. Rushed conviction for toxic attachment. So whether that be the actual, because you're the like a self-abandonment, that trauma response of overgiving because of maybe you've experienced abandonment at an early age, right? So repeat, right? And then Or if we've been in abusive relationships, we're quick to be triggered to seeing something that someone says or does and label it as, but not because of our own trauma and our triggers, but forgetting to see the humanity of the other person, that we're much more complex than that. We're human beings, not items, right? Not transactional machinery, right? But the walls that we've built to protect ourselves and calling that healing, it's only really half of it, right? The flip side to that judge is turning it into discernment. Discernment takes the accountability with the curiosity and opens that door to the back, connecting the empathy, but with discernment, right? And the more that we're willing to be curious and learn and grow and communicate, the next that came out as the third is the Tower. If you remember, the Tower came out in the last episode as well. This very Tower, the Tower, cognitive upheaval, right? So the awareness, the outer sort of structure, but also the accountability piece, the internal mental accountability, conscious awareness. And then we have in the Knight of Cups. And as we're in the month again, right? Pride. Love is love. Authenticity. Knight of Cups. Passion quest. Ta-da! But anyways, these were the extra cards. But I'm only going to read the if you want to catch the reading for the Tower, 16, the Tower, be sure to check out the previous video of this version 3, because I do read this card there, okay? Oh, bye-bye, light. I am going to read the Devil. Actually, do I read this Devil in a previous video? I can't remember. If I do, it will be there. But I'm still going to read it anyways. Yeah. Okay. So, and then at the bottom of the deck, we have the Two of Swords, choice avoidance. Oh boy, right? And I'm hearing when we listen to gossip about other people, when we don't take the time to be curious and direct and have open, genuine, integral conversation with another person when there's friction, when we're triggered, right? That's part of the reaction versus response, right? We get things twisted. We lose the sense of humanity of the other person, and then we end up in a pattern of choice avoidance. So, right? Okay. I'm going to read the devil card here. Another major arcana. Okay. So, and there are two devil cards, but this is the first one. Okay, so 15, the devil, toxic attachment. The devil, keywords, addiction, bondage, emotional entrapment, repeating patterns, power imbalance, seductive control, obsession, nuance, breaking free, fear of detachment, control, inversion, resistance to release, cycle, awareness, emotional clarity emerging, toxic attachment, a compulsive attachment pattern in which emotional, psychological, or material bonds persist despite harm, reinforced by fear, dependency, control dynamics, or distorted perceptions of safety or reward. Meaning, the devil represents bondage, compulsion, and restrictive patterns. Traditionally, this card reflects attachment to behaviors, relationships, or beliefs that persist despite negative consequences. It highlights how fear, desire, or dependency can reinforce cycles that feel difficult to escape, even when awareness is present. This card examines toxic attachment as a psychological pattern rather than a moral failing. This card examines toxic attachment as a psychological pattern rather than a moral failing. It invites exploration of what is being held onto, why release feels threatening, and how perceived safety may be linked to harm. The devil emphasizes that awareness is the first step toward change, allowing agency to be reclaimed through conscious choice rather than compulsion-driven behavior. Monster take. Toxic attachment forms when connection is sustained through imbalance rather than mutual care. One figure stands elevated, confident, and unaffected, while others remain bound below, dependent on proximity for safety or survival. The attachment persists not because it is nurturing, but because separation feels more dangerous than remaining. This monster highlights how power stabilizes attachment for one side while draining the other. Control may be subtle, reinforced through fear, dependency, or unequal access to security. Liberation begins when attachment is recognized as structural rather than personal. Awareness allows choice to replace compulsion, restoring agency without assigning shame to survival-based bonds. Holding this card. This card holds connection through constraint. Bonding persists while freedom remains limited. Yes. Yes. Interesting. Okay. So that's the devil. Question 3. Okay, question 4. We have what tends to trigger our reactive patterns? Also bear in mind that the devil card did come up upside down, eh? I just put it right side up. So you really, based on what I was reading, we want to look at the, really, pay attention to the reversed meaning, right? Which would be the negative side attributes to this devil card. Anyway. What tends to trigger our reactive patterns? As this is a collective reading as I'm doing this. What tends to trigger our reactive patterns? Okay. The Fool. Agoraphobia. Interesting. And haven't I been talking about that with the labeling, that box effect? When we shove, literally we have this being in a box. Like literally balled up, curled up in a box on the top of a mountain with a little flower as its companion. Teeter-tottering at the top. Interesting. At the bottom of the deck, we have the Knight of Swords. Rushed conviction. For question 4. Okay. Yes, I will read the Fool card. Major Arcana? Yes, Skippy. Okay. A 0, the Fool, agoraphobia. The Fool. Keywords: new beginnings, trust, leap of faith, risk, innocence, potential, curiosity, openness, freedom, spontaneity, uncharted territory, naivety, nuance, fear, avoidance, paralysis, safety seeking, rumination, withdrawal, risk aversion, stagnation, mistrust, containment, agoraphobia. A mental health condition characterized by an intense fear of situations where escape might be difficult or help unavailable. This fear often leads to avoidance of places or experiences perceived as unsafe. Meaning, the Fool represents the threshold between hesitation and movement, the moment before certainty when possibility outweighs preparation. Traditionally, this card reflects new beginnings, driven by curiosity and openness rather than planning. It emphasizes trust in the act of stepping forward, even when outcomes remain unclear. The Fool signals potential that emerges through experience rather than foresight. From a psychological perspective, this card reflects the tension between fear and freedom. Movement may feel risky, yet stagnation carries its own cost. Growth often begins before confidence fully forms. The Fool highlights how courage can exist alongside uncertainty, emphasizing willingness over assurance as the catalyst for transformation. Monster take. Agoraphobia confines the Fool's openness, turning possibility into perceived threat. Rather than stepping freely into the unknown, the Fool becomes enclosed and protective, prioritizing safety over exploration. The expansive horizon traditionally associated with this card narrows into a guarded interior space where movement feels risky and overwhelming. This monster reflects an overcorrection to uncertainty. When exploration once led to loss or instability, retreat can feel like wisdom. Over time, protection becomes limitation. The Fool's trust is not gone, but postponed, waiting for conditions to feel safe enough to begin. Holding this card. This card holds the threshold where movement has not yet occurred. Possibility remains present even as it is withheld. Yes. Okay. We have question 5. What would a grounded, integrity-based response look like instead? What would a grounded, integrity-based response look like instead? Okay. Ooh. Oh. Okay. So, what came out, we have the Two of Cups, emotional resonance, with 20, Judgment, deconditioning. Interesting. Now the Two of Cups did come in reverse. Come out in reverse. By the way. Right? So, but we have 20, Judgment, deconditioning. So I'm going to read that. Another major arcana here. Okay. Okay. 20, Judgment, deconditioning. Judgment, keywords, awakening, rebirth, shedding labels, breaking programming, inner reckoning, reclaiming identity, radical self-truth. Nuance, fear of change, stuck in old scripts, false self, societal pressure, regression, identity crisis, avoiding transformation. Deconditioning, the deliberate process of identifying and unlearning internalized beliefs, roles, or responses shaped by external conditioning, enabling reassessment of identity, values, and personal agency. Meaning, judgment represents awakening, reckoning, and conscious self-evaluation. Traditionally, this card reflects moments of realization where past actions, beliefs, or identities are reassessed. It signals release from outdated narratives and emphasizes renewal through accountability rather than punishment. This card highlights deconditioning, the process of identifying and unlearning internalized beliefs shaped by authority, culture, or expectation. Judgment invites reflection on inherited patterns and automatic responses, encouraging intentional reconstruction of identity and values through awareness rather than reactive rejection of the past. Monster take. Deconditioning begins within the system itself, where judgment appears as malfunction rather than awakening. The figure on the conveyor belt does not step away by choice. It glitches mid-process, surrounded by identical compliant forms. The disruption marks a break in programming, where inherited identity no longer synchronizes with imposed design. This monster reflects how awakening can feel like failure before freedom. The system registers difference as error, not insight. Deconditioning isolates before it liberates, stripping certainty before offering autonomy. Judgment here reveals that transformation often begins as incompatibility when the self can no longer conform without fracturing. Integration follows only after disorientation is endured. Interesting. Here, holding this card loosens inherited frameworks without replacing them. Release is underway, while orientation has not yet settled. Interesting. Okay. And may I remind you, we have 6 here. The Lovers, codependency, and the Two of Cups, emotional resonance, actually came out in reverse. So that idea of deconditioning, right? Really identifying true toxicity, right? That's the the idea of judge versus turning the judge into a saboteur. I mean, sorry, the judge is a saboteur, and we all have that. What I'm saying is turning that judge into a sage. Sorry, discernment. Right? It's through awareness and accountability. Okay. Hope everyone is doing all right as we go through this together. Okay, let's see. And I know that we're also addressing some really deep topics, like when we talk about things and patterns of recognition, when we talk about toxicity and addiction and trauma patterns and things like that, and triggers even. If you're really struggling, I hope that you will be sure to make sure to seek out professional assistance. And of course, I always check my description box, because I do have some limited resources down below. And you could always reach out to me if you are having trouble finding, support, and you're wanting to reach out to, for any additional support that I could provide, based on my knowledge. And like I said, my background, based on where you may be, that might be limiting for me as well, if I'm not familiar with where you are. I'm based in Canada, so, it's a little easier if you're based in the, same place as me. But again, and it doesn't have to be for that. If you just want to say hello, you want to reach out, comment, collab even. Maybe you have a deck that you like how I've done the spreads and you want to collaborate with me. Be sure to everything is down below. And like I said, as I'm building my grief series, be sure to check out, the description box, and check out my school app. But anyway, so, that was Judgment. So that was question 5. And question 6, where may we be performing awareness instead of embodying accountability? Right? As we're talking about integration as well. So collectively speaking, where might we be performing awareness instead of embodying accountability? Ooh. Okay. 10 of Wands, hyper independence. Interesting. So, talked about this, the hierarchy, the labeling, the tit for tat, that sort of cyclical behavior of survival of the fittest, that To me, this is a very ego-based approach to healing. We lose that connectivity and sense of, you know, oneness and community and balance, you know, of how we operate collectively speaking when we operate like this, instead of everyone piling on top of one another, right? Sort of building a foundation with each other. Understanding our complexities. That we are all complex because of what we've, right? And when we've been through enough and we feel like we've, especially if you know, in a cycle of overgiving, right? It's very easy as an empath to feel this. So we close, we trigger into fast judgment and react by withdrawing and building those walls. But when we disconnect and then we, you know, sort of that mentality of survival of the fittest mode, right? That sense of hierarchy, I'm more deserving because I've suffered more, blah, mentality, you know, sort of level of judgment. The independence, right? Keeps us divided, keeps us in that, you know, chasing after the trophy and survival of the fittest to who gets it. And we transactionally use each other rather than respecting each other's humanity and honoring that, right? Okay. And what supports us in choosing response over reaction consistently? There we go. What supports us choosing response over reaction consistently? King of Pentacles, legacy builder. Wow. So healing ourselves and for the purpose of nurturing a healthier, more balanced legacy moving forward, right? When we take that accountability within ourselves and our families family units, right? We do that, you know, and we nurture that throughout the relationships that are closest to us. The ones we have with ourselves, those closest to us within our communities, and essentially collectively with everyone. But again, understanding that perfection isn't the goal. It's progression, growth. That's how the healing journey works, right? When we are breaking patterns and we're taking the accountability, it's right for all of our triggers and our traumas and the patterns of behavior that we fell into for survival. When we take have the awareness and then take the accountability, and those work in tandem throughout our healing journey, right? We bring that into integration. We are planting the seeds for new growth, healthier harvest later. Okay, and then the optional question. What is asking us to slow down so integrity can become action in real time? Eight. Wow, 8, strength. So we get 8 strength for the 8th bonus question. To wrap up this tarot spread and this 4-part saga, if you will. All the way to integration. Having the strength and willpower to face every aspect of self and being, our light and our shadow, our strengths and our weaknesses, healing and doing the healing work and the shadow work, having the awareness and then taking the accountability. Eight, strength, suppression. When we shove each other in a box, when we deny and don't heal the parts of ourselves that are hurting, that have been hurt, and it continues to eat away at our mental health. And we continue to suppress those parts of ourselves, right? Instead of facing the shadows and bringing it into the light and into the awareness. And then having the curiosity and understanding that We are more than just what we see. And if we can understand that about ourselves, we can and accept that and heal that for ourselves, then we can surely be accepting, have awareness, right? And help to support and heal each other too. Because the opposite of suppression is expression, right? When we're coming in and bringing our shadows and integrating and bringing it into the light so that we can integrate our full selves, know our whole selves, respect our whole selves and the whole selves of one another. That's what that other half of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 to verse 13 is saying. And if you don't know, please go look it up. I'll put in editing that part that I'm talking about on screen for you. Right? And I'm going to read the strength card here, suppression. And yeah, and then we'll wrap up this here collective reading and video. Not even sure how long this is right now, so we shall see. Happy editing to me. 8, strength, suppression. Strength, keywords: resilience, patience, emotional control, inner fortitude, quiet power, grace under pressure, containment. Nuance: repression, emotional exhaustion, denial, strained composure, inner collapse, bottled rage, avoidance of vulnerability. Suppression: the act of consciously or unconsciously pushing down emotions, desires, or instincts in order to maintain control or avoid conflict. Meaning: strength represents inner resilience, emotional steadiness, and compassionate self-regulation. Rather than dominance or force, this card emphasizes patience, understanding, and quiet endurance. It reflects the capacity to face difficulty with composure and trust rather than reactivity. At a deeper level, this card explores the relationship between instinct and awareness. Strength suggests impulses are not meant to be suppressed, but understood and integrated. True stability emerges through self-acceptance and measured response, highlighting emotional intelligence as a source of lasting power rather than control. Monster take. Suppression reshapes strength into endurance without integration. The central figure holds composure so tightly that unexpressed emotion accumulates overhead, forming a shadow that acts indirectly. Harm is not intentional, but it is real. Relationships, shared experiences, or emotional bonds may be wounded through absence rather than aggression. Strength becomes survival-based regulation, prioritizing control over connection. This monster humanizes both sides. For the one, suppressing accountability lies in recognizing that restraint without integration limits capacity and repeats collapse. Growth requires difficult inner work. Yes, it does. Not continued containment. For those affected, the outcome reflects another's limits, not their worth. Compassion does not require self-sacrifice. Strength here teaches sustainable power, integrating the shadow, choosing healing over endurance, and allowing distance when closeness becomes harmful. Holding this card. This card contains intensity beneath restraint. Control is maintained while feeling stays compressed. Yes. And just to know, for those that, are into numerology, as I am, as I read the Strength card, I feel like it's no coincidence that the page number is a master number 22. I don't know if Amiee, if you happen to be watching this, if you even noticed that, but I did. And if you happen to have this guidebook, if you happen to be working with the Mental Monsters Tarot, let me know if you're into numerology too, and you're working with this deck. Do you notice the page numbers like I do when reading? Because I feel like that adds an extra sort of angel number, sort of spiritual oomph, if you're into that sort of thing, right? And like this sort of hidden message from angel guides and whatnot. So yeah. So yeah, so I want to thank you for joining me for part 4, and even for if you've made it all the way through to all watching all of the all 4 of this Mental Monsters tarot spread saga, all the way through to the final boss here, if you will, tarot spread. Please, using the hashtag final boss, and let me know, what you think, of this series, and if you enjoy, how I've broken down and featured tarot decks and creating, mental health reflection tarot spreads with it. Let me know what your thoughts are, but I really feel like, I really enjoyed my time working with the Mental Monsters Tarot, and it was absolutely amazing to even, be doing this, the time it took me to, put this spread together, and just reflecting on all the things that I've talked about throughout that I, this mini series here of my therapy and tarot, right? And also even what I talk about across my channels, even over on the spiritual void from A to Z. And yes, I haven't done, actual videos, feature videos with people in a while, and that's because, I've been focused on my healing work, my therapy, my grief personally with my father, again, wrapping up a 13-year continuous grief cycle. That's a lot for a nervous system. And, even, the physical ailments that I've, had to deal with along the way, as a result as well, and endured, but, the friendships and relationships and lost and, misunderstandings, because, again, triggers, mine, others, lack of communication, people quick to shove me into a box, right? I've always been, kept my heart open. I've always led with my heart. I've always been that. And I've always, my value of always, moving. Again, I'm not perfect. I am still human. I, like I said, have, more recently learning things about myself, as I've been going through my healing process and this journey. I've been committed to always leading and being, open, even carrying empathic burnout, and not fully understanding the true depth to my empathic abilities, because that was never something that was explored, or that was really recognized for me. And like I said, being triangulated at a very early age and not having that conscious awareness, and that loud judge, that shaped my experience, that led me to my own collapse and burnout, right? From my trauma response and overgiving. But, I learned a really big lesson, but also in that learned the truth of my determination and my strength, and that true appreciation for love and authenticity and respect and integrity, and how that is the guiding light that shines so bright for me that I must follow it. And out of all that I've endured, emotionally speaking, on my, throughout my lifetime till present, and still have that desire to heal and be open and honest and reflective, and have the curiosity, when I interact with others, it's because of the length of an amount of time and healing work and dedication I've put into, been forced to, even rather, I should even say, but I'd had to, for my own sake, for my own mental health, whole health, love of self, so that I didn't diminish in self-erasure. Doing the shadow work and the healing work to really be able to see myself in the mirror and appreciate myself in my totality. Because as I choose every day, when I get up in the morning and look at myself in the mirror and can see myself and identify myself as love, and know it wholeheartedly to the depths of my soul, I am love. So when I interact with others, I know that you are loved too. So please be sure to take care of yourself and one another. Let's bring the awareness and the accountability together and flip that switch and integrate true love and change, so that we can all grow in love, because love is love with each other. And while you're at it, please don't forget about me too. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Comment down below. Please make sure to hit that notification bell so you'll always be in the know when I post my next video. Be sure to check out the full saga of this Mental Monsters video. Be sure to check out the interview I did with the creator behind Push Kitty and the brains behind the Mental Monsters Tarot and Guidebook herself, Amiee. And, you know, thank you so much, Amiee, for the opportunity to do that special interview with you. And my very chatty walkthrough that I've done, part 1 and part 2 of the very lovely Mental Monsters Tarot. Thank you so much for watching. I love all of you. And, you know, be sure to check out my grief series as I'm putting it out. Now that I've wrapped up the Mental Monsters Tarot, I can focus on doing episode 4 of my grief series. Again, using the very lovely Gentle Tarot by Mari, the Gentle Tarot by Mari in the Sky, and the book Good Grief by Granger E. Westberg. And of course, like I said, there are previews there on my channel. And of course, if you follow the school app, you will find the links to the full video that's time-stamped and has the tarot spreads to go along with up in the classroom for you. So be sure to check that out. And if you know anybody going through grief and can definitely benefit from following my grief series, be sure to share that with others. Yeah, and as I always say at the end of my videos, please be sure to check your privilege and mind your magic. What do I mean by that? I mean, when I say check your privilege, before you're quick to judge someone, based on a trigger that led to a reaction, the idea of having mindfulness, right? and conscious awareness of other people and the complexities that we all have, because we all walk different journeys in this lifetime, and all we have in all lifetimes in our experience. When we're recognizing the humanity in ourselves and each other, we're leading with love and curiosity, communication and comprehension. That's part of the integration for change. And mind your magic. The mindfulness and conscious awareness and love and respect and integrity as you move through your everyday life, choosing love and authenticity and respect and appreciation. That, to me, is love. No matter who you are or who you come across and you interact with. Doesn't matter your race, your religion, your economic status, your sexuality, your gender. We are all deserving of love. Respect. The autonomy of self. So, when awareness and accountability work hand in hand, and we can bring ourselves back into balance with our minds and our hearts, then our actions will speak. That's the magic. That we are minding and that we seek. So with all that being said, I love you all so, so much. Until next time, please don't forget to live, listen, and learn. I love you all. Take care, everybody. Bye.